Hey guys, tonight we're stepping softly back into a small kitchen on a Friday evening, sometime in the middle of the 1950s, where a whole week of living is about to be counted out in little stacks of bills on a worn wooden table. There is coffee cooling in a cup. There is a pencil, a ledger book, and a row of envelopes waiting to be filled. And there is a family gathered close, about to decide how one honest paycheck will carry them all the way to next Friday. Before we settle in, I want to say a real thank you to the listener who suggested this one. You send me the most thoughtful ideas, and so many of these videos exist only because someone like you took a moment to ask about a corner of the past worth remembering. It genuinely shapes everything I make here. If this is the kind of quiet history you enjoy, you're always welcome to like the video, to subscribe, and to leave a comment telling me where you are listening from tonight. No pressure at all, and if you would rather drift off with these stories away from the screen, the channel is now on Spotify as well, with the link waiting for you down in the description. So go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights until the room goes soft. Switch on a fan for that gentle wash of white noise. Pull the blanket up, find the cool side of the pillow, and let the day fall away. Because I have always wondered what it really felt like to be handed a paycheck in cash, still warm from a shift, and to carry a whole family's week home in your coat pocket. What did a single dollar actually buy at the corner grocery in 1955? How did one income stretch across a family, a home, and a future, with a little set aside besides? What did the milkman leave on the porch before the sun came up? And how did a mother, working only with a pencil and a drawer full of envelopes, make it all somehow fit? And just like that, it is 1955. The paycheck is on the kitchen table. The coffee has gone quiet in its cup. Somewhere down the block a screen door taps shut as the last delivery of the day is made, and here, under one warm lamp, the careful, hopeful business of a family week is only just beginning. Let us start on Friday evening, when the front door opens and your father steps inside carrying the whole week home in his pocket. There is a small brown envelope creased at the corners, with his name typed across the front and a little window showing the folded bills inside. He sets it on the kitchen table, the way you might set down something breakable. Payday in the 1950s has a sound to it, the soft rustle of cash counted by hand, and a smell too, ink and paper, and a long shift finally ending. There is no direct deposit here, no numbers blinking on a screen, just money you can hold, money that has to last, and a family already gathering to see how far it will go. You watch him hang his coat on the hook by the door, and there is a certain tiredness in his shoulders that the paycheck does not quite erase. He has earned this money with his hands or his back or his patience, standing at a machine or behind a counter or out under the sky, and the envelope in his pocket is the whole of it, every hour rendered down into paper and coin. Maybe it is $60 for the week. Maybe it is $70 if there was overtime. It is not a fortune, and everyone in the room knows it, but it is enough if it is handled right. And handling it right is the quiet skill this whole house is built upon. He slides a thumb under the flap and tips the contents onto the table, and there they are. The bills fanned out under the light, along with a small folded slip that shows the hours worked, and the little that was taken out. You lean in close to look, because there is something almost solemn about it, the way the family gathers to see the week made visible. Your mother nods once, already counting in her head, already sorting it into the shapes it will need to take. Nothing is spent yet, nothing is even touched. It simply sits there for a moment, whole and hopeful, before the careful work of dividing it begins. There is a weight to cash that we have mostly forgotten. When money is paper in your hand, you feel it leave. You feel the stack grow thinner as the week goes on, and that thinness teaches you things a glowing number never could. Your father knows exactly what is in that envelope because he can see it and hold it and count it twice. He knows what $1 is because he traded an hour of his life for it. That knowledge lives in his fingers, and it will pass to you, quietly, over years of watching this same Friday scene unfold under this same lamp. Down the street, other fathers are coming home the same way. Envelopes in coat pockets, screen doors tapping shut behind them. The whole neighbourhood runs on this rhythm, this weekly heartbeat of cash arriving and being carefully spent. There are no credit cards to smooth over a hard week, no borrowing against next month to cover this one. What you have is what came home tonight, and what came home tonight has to stretch across 7 days of eating and heating and living. It is a kind of honesty, hard and plain, and it shapes every choice this family makes. You notice too the small ceremony of it. Your mother sets out her coffee. Your father rolls up his sleeves. The younger children are shooed toward the other room, though they linger in the doorway, sensing that something important is happening. This is the family business, conducted not in an office but at the kitchen table, and everyone old enough to understand feels the seriousness in the air. The money that will feed them and clothe them and keep the lights burning is right here, and it will not multiply on its own. It must be guided, envelope by envelope, into all the places it needs to go. For all the smallness of the sum, there is dignity in it. A working man bringing home his pay, a family gathered to make it enough, a table full of modest bills that will somehow become a whole week of life. There is no shame in the tightness of it, only a shared understanding that this is how things are done, and that doing them well is a matter of pride. Your father did not come home with much, but he came home with enough, and he came home with it in cash, real and countable and his. It is the kind of moment that has quietly slipped out of modern life. Now the money arrives while we sleep, a number that appears and disappears without ever passing through our hands, and something is lost in that ease, some sense of what a paycheck truly represents. But here, on this Friday evening in 1955, the envelope sits on the table under the warm lamp, and every eye in the room understands its weight. It is not just money. It is a week of safety, bought one honest hour at a time. And so the family leans in together, ready to begin the careful, hopeful work of making it last, grateful simply to have it there at all, folded and waiting in the middle of the kitchen table. It is after supper now, the dishes drying in the rack, and the kitchen table becomes something more than a place to eat. Your mother spreads out a small ledger book, its pages soft from handling, and lays a stubby pencil beside it. This is where the week is decided. The overhead bulb hums a little. A cup of coffee cools at her elbow, forgotten. She writes in a careful, slanting hand, income at the top, then a column of everything the family owes and needs and hopes for. It is quiet, unhurried work, the kind of arithmetic done by lamplight that most of us have handed over to apps and screens. But here, every dollar has a name before it is ever spent. You pull out a chair and sit near her, close enough to watch the pencil move but quiet enough not to break her concentration. She works without hurry, her lips moving faintly as she adds a column, checks it, and adds it again to be sure. There is no calculator here, only the arithmetic she learned as a girl and has practiced every week since, until the numbers come to her almost like breathing. The rent goes down first, because it is the largest and the least forgiving. Then the groceries, which she knows almost to the penny from years of walking the same aisles. The ledger book itself is a kind of family history. Its early pages, months and years back, hold the record of leaner weeks and better ones, of prices slowly rising, of a small triumph now and then when the savings line grew instead of shrinking. She turns to a fresh page and smooths it flat with her palm, and there is a small satisfaction in the blankness of it. A week not yet spent, still full of possibility. She dates the top corner in her neat hand and begins, and the ordinary magic of it is that by the time she is done, an unruly pile of bills will have become a plan. The light overhead is not bright, and it gathers close around the table, leaving the corners of the kitchen in soft shadow. You can hear the tick of the clock on the wall and the last small sounds of the house settling into evening. Your father sits across from her, present but mostly quiet, offering a number when she asks for one, agreeing when she looks up to confirm. This is her work and she's good at it, better than anyone gives her credit for, and he knows it. Between them there is a kind of easy partnership, unspoken, that runs the whole household on very little. She writes down things you would not have thought to write. A few cents set aside for church on Sunday. A small amount held back for the insurance man who will knock mid-week. A line for the shoes one of the children will need before long, because a good mother budgets for the need before it becomes urgent. Nothing escapes her notice. The whole life of the family, its obligations and its small mercies, is laid out here in a single column of penciled figures, and she balances it the way a tightrope walker balances, with total attention and a calm that comes only from practice. There is worry in it, of course. You can see it in the way she pauses over certain lines, the way she taps the pencil against her teeth when a total comes out tighter than she hoped. Some weeks the numbers simply do not want to meet, and she must go back through the columns looking for something to trim, a cheaper cut of meat, a delayed purchase, a small joy postponed. But she does not let the worry show for long. She finds the answer, or she makes one, and she writes it down, and the plan holds together for another 7 days. What strikes you watching is how much thought goes into so little money. Nothing is careless, nothing is assumed. Every dollar is considered, questioned, and assigned a purpose before it is allowed to leave her hands. In our own time, money flows so quickly and so invisibly that we can spend a week's worth without ever really seeing it go. But here at this table, spending is a deliberate act, weighed and recorded, and the ledger is both a record and a conscience, keeping the family honest with itself. When at last the columns balance, she sets down the pencil and lets out a small breath. The week is figured, the money has its marching orders. She closes the ledger and rests her hand on its worn cover for a moment, the way you might rest a hand on something dependable, and there is a quiet pride in her face that has nothing to do with wealth. She has taken a modest paycheck and turned it once again into a whole week of care. It is late now, and the coffee at her elbow has gone cold, untouched. She rises, tidies the pencil into the drawer and turns off the overhead bulb, and the kitchen goes soft and dark behind her. The plan is made. Tomorrow it will begin its slow work of carrying the family through. And you carry to bed with you the image of your mother at the table, doing sums by lamplight, keeping a whole household afloat with nothing more than a pencil, a worn book, and a steadiness that most of us have long since set aside. Watch closely now, because this is the heart of it. Your mother opens a drawer and takes out a small bundle of envelopes, each one labelled in pencil, worn soft from 100 Fridays. One says rent, one says groceries, one says gas and lights. One, thinner than the rest, simply says savings. She counts the bills from the pay envelope into each one, slowly, deliberately, filling some to the brim and others just enough. When an envelope is empty, the spending for that thing is done, no matter what the calendar says. It is a system built on discipline and trust, and it holds the whole household together with nothing more than paper and resolve. The envelopes themselves have a history in her hands. Some are older than others, their edges gone furry with use, their labels traced over more than once as the pencil faded. She has used the same ones for years, reluctant to waste even paper, and there is something tender in how familiar they are to her, how she knows each by its weight and wear before she even reads the label. This is not a fancy system. It costs nothing to build, but it works, week after week, and in its plainness lies its strength. She lays them out in a row on the cleared table and begins the careful business of filling them. Rent first, always, the largest share counted out with a kind of reverence, because a roof is the thing you cannot do without. Then groceries, a stack she knows will have to feed them all until the next Friday comes around. Then the smaller envelopes, gas and lights, the little that goes toward the milk bill, the coins for church, the modest sum she is determined to slip into savings even when it means doing without something else. You understand, watching her hands move, why the system holds. The money is physically divided, so there is no borrowing from one purpose to feed another without knowing you have done it. If the grocery envelope runs thin by Wednesday, then the meals grow simpler for the rest of the week, and that is that. She will not raid the rent envelope, will not touch the savings, because to do so would be to break a promise she has made to the whole family. The envelopes are her boundaries, drawn in pencil and honoured absolutely, and they are what keep a tight budget from quietly falling apart. There is a lesson in the fullness and thinness of each one. The savings envelope is always the thinnest, and yet she never leaves it empty. Even a single dollar goes in, even in the leanest week, because she believes in the habit more than the amount. A dollar saved this week means two the next, and slowly, over months, the thinness becomes something with real weight to it. Enough for Christmas, or a doctor's bill, or the small emergencies that life is always sending. She's playing a long game with short money, and she is winning it $1 at a time. The children learn from this, whether they mean to or not. You have seen the way the older ones already understand that when the candy envelope, if there even is one, is empty, there is no more candy and no amount of asking will refill it. It is a hard lesson wrapped in a gentle system, and it forms in them early the sense that money is finite, that choices have consequences, that wanting a thing and being able to afford it are two entirely separate matters. These are lessons that will serve them their whole lives, taught not in words but in the quiet ritual of the envelopes. It is worth pausing to think how far we have drifted from this. Our money now lives in a single invisible pool, and we draw from it freely, for groceries and rent and small indulgences alike, rarely feeling the walls between one purpose and another. The tap of a card does not tell you which envelope you are emptying, because there are no envelopes anymore, only a number that rises and falls without any shape at all. Something in that ease has cost us the very discipline your mother built, with a drawer full of labelled paper. When the last bill has found its home, she squares the envelopes into a neat stack and returns most of them to the drawer, keeping only the grocery envelope out for tomorrow's trip to the market. The rent envelope she tucks somewhere safe, to wait for the first of the month. The savings envelope she handles last and most carefully, sliding it into the very back of the drawer as though hiding it from temptation, which in a way she is. The money is divided now. Every dollar knows where it belongs. She closes the drawer and rests her hand on the front of it for just a second, the way she rested her hand on the ledger, a small gesture of trust in a system that has never once let her down. The week is not only figured now, but sorted, made physical, ready to be spent exactly as planned and no further. And you carry with you the simple wisdom of it, that a family with very little can still live with great order, if only they are willing to count it out slowly by hand into envelopes worn soft with the honest labour of 100 Fridays. It is Saturday morning, and the grocery list is already written on the back of an envelope. You walk with your mother down to the market, the pavement still cool, a canvas bag folded over her arm. Inside, the store smells of sawdust on the floor, and cut meat, and the green of fresh produce misted with water. She moves down the aisles the way a captain reads a map, comparing prices, weighing a can in her palm, doing sums in her head faster than any register. A loaf of bread here cost less than a quarter. A dozen eggs, a little over $half. Every choice matters, and she makes each one with the quiet confidence of someone who has done this her whole life. The list itself is a small work of planning, written the night before while the meals for the week took shape in her mind. She knows before she leaves the house roughly what she will spend, because the grocery envelope holds only so much, and she will not come home having spent a penny more. There is no wandering the aisles tossing in whatever catches the eye. Every item on that envelope earns its place, and the things not on it stay firmly on the shelf, however tempting they look under the store's bright hanging lights. You trail behind her with the canvas bag, learning without knowing you are learning. She lifts 2 cans of the same size and compares the prices printed on their paper labels, choosing the cheaper without a second thought. She presses a thumb gently to the tomatoes to test them, sniffs a cantaloupe at the stem, checks the date on the eggs. These are skills, real ones, honed over years, and they save real money. A few cents here and a few cents there that add up across a whole cart to something that matters when the envelope is thin. The grocer knows her, of course. He calls a greeting from behind the counter, asks after the family, and she answers warmly while never quite losing track of her arithmetic. There is a relationship here that our own hurried shopping has almost entirely lost, a sense that buying food is a human exchange and not merely a transaction. He might set aside a good cut for her, or tell her the beans came in fresh this morning, or mention that the price of coffee has crept up again so she can plan accordingly. He's part of her budgeting in his way, an ally in the weekly work of feeding a family well on little. She buys in the sizes that make sense, not always the largest, because a bargain is only a bargain if you can use it before it spoils. Flour and sugar she might buy in quantity, since they keep, but the perishable things she buys only as much as the week will eat. Nothing is wasted, because waste is money thrown away, and money thrown away is an hour of your father's work gone for nothing. This economy runs so deep in her that she does not even think of it as thrift. It is simply how a sensible person shops. You watch her pause over a small indulgence, perhaps a bag of cookies or a nicer cut of meat, and you can almost see the calculation happen behind her eyes. Is there room in the envelope for this? What would have to be given up to make room? Sometimes the answer is yes, and the treat goes into the bag with a small private smile. More often the answer is not this week, and she sets it back gently, without regret, because she has long since made peace with the difference between what she wants and what she can have. At the counter, the grocer rings up each item by hand, calling out the prices, and she checks them against her running total, catching any error before it reaches the drawer. She counts out the bills from the grocery envelope, exactly what she planned, and takes her change, and there is a quiet satisfaction in having come in on budget once again. The canvas bag, now full, has a good honest weight to it, a week of meals gathered up and ready to carry home. The walk back is slower for the load, and you carry your share, feeling the strain of it in your arms, a small taste of what it takes to keep a family fed. The sun has climbed higher now and warmed the pavement, and the neighbourhood is coming awake around you, other families setting out on their own Saturday errands, the whole street engaged in the same careful commerce of getting by. There is a rhythm to it, comforting and sure, the market on Saturday as fixed in the week as church on Sunday. It strikes you, later, how much thought went into a simple bag of groceries. Not one item in it was bought carelessly. Each was weighed and chosen and paid for in cash counted out by hand, and the whole trip was governed by a limit she never once broke. In our own time we fill carts almost absently, swiping a card that hides the cost until the statement comes, and the old skills of comparing and choosing and doing without have mostly faded away. But here, On a cool Saturday morning in 1955, your mother reads the aisles like a map and brings the family safely home, fed for another week, with the grocery envelope emptied to exactly the penny she intended. Before the house is even awake, there is already a delivery on the step. The milkman has come and gone in the pale grey light, leaving glass bottles beaded with cold, their little cardboard caps pressed neatly into place. You bring them in before school, the cream still resting at the top, and set the empties out to be collected and washed and filled again. The milk bill is settled at the end of the month, a few dollars for weeks of doorstep delivery, and no one thinks it's strange. It is a small, steady rhythm, the kind of quiet convenience that has almost entirely disappeared, and it costs the family less than you might expect. You've heard him some mornings if you woke early enough. The soft clink of glass against glass, the low hum of his truck idling at the curb, the quick light steps up the walk and back. By the time you open the door, the street is empty again, and only the bottles remain to prove he was ever there, standing in a neat little row where the porch meets the door. There is something almost magical in it to a child. This gift that arrives in the dark and is simply there when the sun comes up, cold and fresh and waiting. The bottles themselves are heavy and satisfying in the hand, thick glass that has made this journey many times before and will make it many times again. Each bears the dairy's name pressed into the surface, and the cream, undisturbed by any machine, has risen to the top in a pale golden layer that your mother spoons off for coffee or saves for something special. You learn to carry them carefully, two at a time, because a dropped bottle is not just a mess, but a small loss, a thing that costs money to replace, and in this house nothing that costs money is treated lightly. The system works because everyone plays their part. Your mother leaves a note tucked into an empty bottle when she wants something changed, an extra quart this week, or a pause while the family is away, and the milkman reads it and adjusts without a word needing to be spoken aloud. The empties go out rinsed and clean, ready to be sterilized and filled again, and this simple loop of glass going out and coming back turns waste into almost nothing. It is thrifty and tidy and kind to the world in a way we have only lately started trying to recover. What surprises people now is how little it all cost. A few dollars a month brought milk to the door several times a week, delivered by a man who knew the family and could be trusted to come in fair weather and foul. There was no premium for the convenience, no sense that having a thing brought to you was a luxury only the rich could afford. It was simply how milk arrived, for nearly everyone, and it was folded into the budget as an ordinary expense, no more remarkable than the bread or the coffee. The milkman was a fixture of the neighbourhood, a familiar figure who watched the children grow and marked the seasons by his rounds. In summer he might come earlier, before the heat could turn the milk, and in winter you might find the cream frozen and pushed up through the cap in a little column, a small marvel on a cold morning. He knew which houses had new babies and needed more, which had lost someone and might want a gentle word. He was part deliveryman and part neighbour, stitched into the daily life of the street in a way that no modern service ever quite manages. You set the empties out now, lining them up where the full ones stood, and there is a small pleasure in completing the circle, in giving back what you have used so it can be made new again. It is a lesson in its own quiet way, this idea that things need not be thrown away, that a bottle can serve 100 families across its long life if only it is cared for and returned. Your mother taught you that without ever making a lesson of it, simply by handing you the empties and trusting you to set them out. Standing on the porch in the cool of the early morning, the full bottles gathered in your arms, you feel the particular calm of a thing that simply works. No one had to hurry. No one had to worry. The milk came, as it always comes, and it will come again in a day or two, and the bill will be small and paid at month's end without fuss. It is convenience without extravagance, service without excess, exactly the kind of modest arrangement a careful budget can not only afford but rely upon. We have lost this, mostly, traded it for jugs of plastic bought in a hurry, and carried home ourselves, and something small but real went out of daily life when the milkman stopped coming. The doorstep no longer holds any surprises in the grey dawn, but here, in 1955, you carry the cold bottles inside and set them in the icebox, the cream still golden at the top, and you feel how a family of modest means could still be waited upon, gently and affordably, by a man who came before the sun and asked only a few dollars a month for the trouble. Let us stay on the porch a moment longer. Alongside the milk there is often bread, left by the bakery route in a waxed paper wrapper still faintly warm. Or perhaps your mother bakes her own, filling the kitchen with a smell so good it feels like something you could save and spend later. Bread in the 1950s is cheap and honest. A handful of coins for a loaf, and it stretches through the week in sandwiches and toast, and the heels saved for pudding. Nothing goes to waste. A loaf is not just food here. It is a small daily economy, sliced thin and made to last. If the bakery truck comes, it comes not long after the milkman, and the two together make the porch on certain mornings a small marketplace of good things, waiting quietly to be gathered in. The bread through its waxed wrapper gives off a smell that reaches you the moment you open the door, yeasty and warm, and it is all you can do not to tear off a corner right there on the step. Your mother will slice it thin at breakfast, and thin is not stinginess but wisdom, because a loaf sliced thin goes further than a loaf sliced thick, and going further is the whole art of feeding a family on little. More often, though, your mother makes her own, and those are the mornings you remember best. She works the dough with her hands early before the day gets away from her, and sets it to rise under a clean cloth in a warm corner of the kitchen. By midday the whole house is filled with that smell, deep and homely, and impossible to describe to anyone who has not lived inside it. Homemade bread costs even less than the baker's, only flour and yeast and a little of her time, and her time she gives gladly, because a loaf from her own oven feeds the family cheaper and better, both. There is a rhythm to how the bread is used across the week, and it is a lesson in thrift you absorb without noticing. Fresh on the first day, it is a treat, eaten warm with a scrape of butter. As it ages, it becomes the foundation of sandwiches for lunch pails and toast for breakfast, and when at last it grows too firm to enjoy plainly, it is not thrown out but transformed, cubed into a pudding, crumbled into a meatloaf to stretch the meat, fried in a pan for a child's after-school hunger. The loaf lives a full life in this house and dies useful, and that is exactly as it should be. The heels, those crusty ends that fussier households might discard, are saved here with real intention. Your mother keeps them in a paper bag, and when enough have gathered she makes something of them, a bread pudding sweetened with a little sugar and whatever fruit is going soft, or a stuffing to fill out a Sunday bird. Nothing edible leaves this kitchen for the trash, because to waste food is to waste money, and to waste money is to waste your father's labour, and that is a thing this family simply does not do. The baker, like the milkman, is a known and trusted figure, and buying from him is as much a relationship as a purchase. He might set aside a day-old loaf at a lower price for those who ask. No shame in it, only sense, and your mother is not too proud to take a bargain when it is offered. She knows the difference between the false economy of buying cheap things that spoil and the true economy of buying good things and using every scrap. The baker respects her for it. This woman who knows exactly what she needs and pays for it in counted coins. It is remarkable looking back how much daily happiness came from something so plain and so affordable as bread. It anchored every meal. It filled the lunch pails your father and the older children carried out into the working world. It turned a thin soup into a satisfying supper and a bare table into a welcoming one. A few coins a day, or a little flour and an hour of a mother's care, and the family never once went without the most basic and comforting of foods. There is a security in that which no amount of money can improve upon. We have grown careless with bread in our time. It comes to us in plastic, engineered to last unnaturally long, and we throw away the ends and the stale slices without a thought, having forgotten entirely the small economies our grandmothers practiced as a matter of course. The smell of a homemade loaf has become a rare thing, a special occasion rather than a Tuesday, and something warm has gone out of the ordinary week along with it. But here, on this morning in 1955, you break off the warm end of a fresh slice and let it melt on your tongue, and you understand in your body what the ledger only records in figures, that a family can be poor in money and still rich in the things that matter, that a few coins wisely spent on flour can fill a house with comfort, and that bread, humble and cheap and made to last, is one of the quiet cornerstones on which the whole careful week is built. It is time to talk about meat, which is where the grocery budget feels its weight most keenly. At the butcher counter, the man in the white apron knows your family by name. Your mother asks for ground beef at around 30 cents the pound, or a chuck roast for Sunday if the week has been kind. He wraps it in white paper and ties it with string, and there is a bit of conversation, a bit of advice about how to make it tender. Meat is a treat as much as a staple, portioned carefully, stretched with potatoes and gravy and whatever the garden gives. A single roast can feed the family twice, and it often does. The butcher shop has a cold, clean smell all its own, sawdust on the floor and the faint metal tang of the meat behind the glass, and it is a serious place where serious choices are made. Your mother approaches the counter knowing almost to the ounce what she can spend, because meat is the single most expensive thing in the whole grocery envelope, and a mistake here can throw the entire week off balance. She does not buy the finest cuts. Those are for people whose paychecks stretch further than your father's. She buys the wise cuts, the ones that reward a cook who knows what she's doing, and she does know. The tougher, cheaper cuts hold no fear for her, because she understands that time and low heat can turn even the humblest piece of beef into something tender and rich. A chuck roast, cheap because it asks for patience, will simmer all Sunday morning while the family is at church and come out falling apart at the touch of a fork. She trades money for effort, as she does in so many corners of this life, and the effort is one she gives without complaint, because it lets the family eat well on what a wealthier household might turn up its nose at. The butcher is her partner in this, the way the grocer and the baker are. He knows her budget without being told and steers her gently toward the good value, the cut that is on the lower shelf this week, the way to grind a bit of the fat in with the lean so the ground beef will be juicier. He gives her a soup bone for next to nothing, sometimes for nothing at all, knowing she will boil it down into a broth that flavours a whole pot of something. These small kindnesses, repeated across many weeks, are worth real money to a family living close to the line, and they flow from a relationship that our own anonymous shopping has entirely lost. You watch how the meat is treated once it comes home, and you understand that buying it was only the beginning of the thrift. Nothing is served whole and finished all at once. A roast appears on Sunday in its glory, the centerpiece of the one truly generous meal of the week, and then it returns, transformed, on Monday as slices in gravy, and perhaps again on Tuesday chopped small into a hash or a pie, each parent stretching the same few dollars of beef across another family dinner. The bones go into the soup pot. Even the fat is saved and rendered for cooking. One purchase, many meals, and not a scrap wasted. The Sunday roast, when the week has allowed it, is more than food. It is the reward for 6 days of care, the moment when the careful budgeting pays off in something warm and abundant on the table. The whole family gathers and there is meat enough for everyone, and the smell of it fills the house the way the smell of bread does, only richer, only rarer. It is a small feast, and it feels like one, precisely because it does not come every day. The scarcity is what makes it precious. There is a discipline in eating this way that we have largely abandoned. Meat, once the expensive treat around which a week was carefully planned, has become for many of us an everyday assumption on the plate at nearly every meal, so common we scarcely notice it. And in gaining that abundance we lost something too, the sense of occasion, the gratitude, the skill of making a little go far. Your mother's generation could feed a family on cuts most of us would not know what to do with, and they did it not as a hardship but as a craft. When your mother carries the string-wrapped parcel home, tucked among the vegetables in the canvas bag, she carries with it the whole plan for the week's meals, laid out in her head down to the last leftover. She knows what will be roasted and what will be stretched, what will be saved and what will be simmered into the next thing. The 30 cents a pound, the modest roast bought only if the week was kind, will be made to yield far more than its price, by a woman who long ago learned that in a careful home, the true cost of a thing is not what you pay for it, but how far you make it go. And so the meat, dearest item in the whole grocery envelope, becomes in her hands not a strain on the budget, but a small triumph of planning, feeding the family 2 or 3 times over from a single humble cut. It is a lesson in patience and skill, and the quiet art of doing more with less, and it is one worth carrying with you long after the butcher's white paper has been folded away. Now comes the largest envelope of all, the one that keeps the roof overhead. Whether your family rents a modest place, or is slowly buying one of the new houses out past the edge of town, the payment is due like clockwork. A mortgage on a small post-war home might run under $100 a month, a figure that sounds almost impossible now. Your father counts it out or writes it into a passbook, and there is a certain pride in it, the sense that a family is building something one payment at a time. It is a heavy line in the ledger, but it is also a promise, and promises like that are what the whole week is arranged around. This payment is different in feeling from all the others, and everyone in the house senses it. The grocery money can flex a little, the treats can be given up in a hard week, but this cannot. The rent is sacred, the mortgage more sacred still, because behind it stands the most basic thing a family can want, a place of their own to be safe in. Your mother fills this envelope first before any other, and she guards it more fiercely than anything else in the drawer, because to fall short here is to risk everything the rest of the budget is meant to protect. If your family rents, the landlord comes for it, or your father carries it to him, and the exchange is brief and formal and marked in a book on both sides. There is no lease of many pages, no automatic draft from an account, only a man handing another man a stack of counted bills and receiving a nod and a receipt in return. It is a plain transaction, and there is dignity in its plainness, in paying what you owe on time and in full, in being known as a family that never once came up short. But it is the new houses, the ones going up in neat rows past the old edge of town, that hold the real dream. All across the country in these years, families who never imagined they could own a home are finding that they can. that a steady job and a modest down payment and a mortgage under $100 a month can buy a small piece of the earth with their name on the deed. Your father speaks of it sometimes at the table quietly, the way people speak of things they hardly dare to want, and the savings envelope grows a little thicker some weeks with exactly that hope in mind. To pay a mortgage is to feel yourself building something, and that feeling runs all through the household. Each monthly payment is not just money spent but ground gained. A little more of the house made truly yours, a little less owed to the bank. Your father counts it out or writes it in the passbook with a seriousness that borders on ceremony, and you can see in his face that he is thinking not only of this month, but of some far-off month when the last payment will be made and the home will be theirs free and clear. It is a long road, 20 years or more, but it is a road that leads somewhere, and walking it steadily is its own reward. The house itself is modest, nothing grand, a few small rooms and a patch of yard, but it is enough, and enough is a word this family understands deeply. There is no wish for more than can be paid for, no reaching after a bigger place that would strain the budget past breaking. The wisdom of the age is to buy what you can afford and pay it down faithfully, and your parents live by that wisdom without ever questioning it. A home you can keep is worth more than a grander one you might lose. It is worth sitting with how remarkable those numbers seem to us now. A whole house, bought for a monthly sum that would scarcely cover a small bill today, purchased on a single ordinary paycheck without a second income to lean on. The arithmetic of that world has slipped so far out of reach that it can feel almost like a fairy tale, and there is a wistfulness in comparing it to our own, where the dream of a first home has grown so much heavier to carry. Your parents did not know how fortunate the timing was. They only knew to work and save and pay on time. When the payment is made and the envelope emptied, there is a settling in the house, a quiet exhale, because the most important thing has been taken care of for another month. The roof is secure, the dream is a little closer. Everything else in the budget, the food and the lights and the small joys, arranges itself around this one steady certainty, that the family has a place to be, and that the place, month by faithful month, is slowly becoming truly and forever their own. And you carry to bed the good solid feeling of a home being built one payment at a time, the largest promise the whole careful week is made to keep. Let us think about the light itself. When evening comes and the lamps go on, there is a quiet awareness in this house of what that light costs. The electric bill and the gas bill arrive monthly, modest by our standards, a few dollars each, but watched all the same. You're taught young to turn off a lamp when you leave a room, to let the oven do double duty, to open the windows before reaching for a fan. Utilities are not endless here, not something that simply runs in the background. They are counted, respected, and used with the same care given to everything else the paycheck must cover. The house does not blaze with light the way houses do now. One lamp is lit where the family gathers, and the rest of the rooms stay dark until someone needs them, and then only briefly. Your mother moves through the evening, switching things off behind her, a habit so deep she does it without thinking, and she's passed it to you with gentle reminders until it became your habit too. A light left burning in an empty room is not a crime exactly, but it is a small carelessness, a few cents wasted, and in this house the few cents are always counted. The gas is watched the same way, for it heats the water and cooks the food and warms the rooms when winter comes. Your mother plans her cooking so the oven earns its heat, baking the bread and the roast and a pudding, all on the same firing, letting nothing go to waste. In the cold months the heat is kept low and the family wears sweaters indoors, gathering close in the warmest room rather than heating the whole house for the sake of comfort. It is not deprivation, it is simply sense, the same sense that governs every other line in the ledger. You learn, growing up in such a house, that comfort has a price, and that the price must always be weighed. When the summer heat presses in, the first answer is not a fan but an open window. The evening air let in to cool the rooms, the shades drawn against the afternoon sun. The fan comes on only when the window is not enough, and it is switched off the moment it is no longer needed. These are small economies, hardly worth mentioning one by one. But your mother knows that a budget is built precisely out of small things attended to faithfully. The bills, when they come, are read with care. Your father studies the figures, compares them to the month before, notes if the usage crept up and wonders aloud why. It is not that $1 more would break them, but that awareness itself is a kind of discipline, a way of staying honest about where the money goes. In our own time, the meter spins invisibly, and the bill arrives however large it arrives, and most of us pay it without ever really looking, having lost the habit of watching. But here every kilowatt and every cubic foot is felt, if only faintly, in the back of the mind. There is a beauty in the dimmer, quieter house that we have traded away without quite meaning to. The single lamp gathers the family into its circle of warm light, and the surrounding dark is not gloomy but cosy, drawing everyone close together in the evening. When the whole house is lit at all hours, as ours tends to be, the family scatters to separate rooms and separate screens, and something of that gathered warmth is lost. Thrift, it turns out, had a gift hidden inside it, the gift of togetherness, though no one budgeting by lamplight would have thought to call it that. You come to understand, too, that this carefulness is not fear but respect. The light and the heat are good things, hard won, paid for with your father's labour, and to use them wastefully would be to hold that labour cheap. So the family uses them well, gratefully, taking what they need and no more. And there is a rightness in that balance that goes deeper than mere saving. It is a way of living lightly, of taking from the world only what you truly require, that our own abundant age might learn something from if it cared to look. When the evening ends and the last lamp is switched off, the house goes fully dark and quiet, and the small daily economy of light and heat closes for another night. A few dollars a month, watched and respected, kept the family warm and lit and comfortable, and taught the children a care for resources that would stay with them all their lives. And you carry into sleep the soft memory of the single lamp and the gathered family within its glow, and the quiet lesson that even something as ordinary as light is worth using thoughtfully. One switched-off bulb at a time. It is worth pausing at the telephone sitting heavy and black on its little table in the hall. The line is often shared, a party line running to 2 or 3 neighbours, so a call means first listening to see if someone else is already talking. Long distance is expensive, saved for holidays and emergencies and news that cannot wait, so the family keeps its calls short and close to home. The monthly bill is small but real, another line in the ledger. It is a slower, more deliberate way of reaching out to the world, and it makes every voice down the wire feel like something worth the cost. The telephone is not yet the constant companion it will one day become. It sits in its place in the hall, dignified and a little imposing, used with purpose rather than for idle chatter. When it rings, the whole house takes notice, because a call means something, a message worth the making, and someone hurries to answer before the ringing stops. There's no leaving it to buzz unheeded, no screening of who might be calling. The phone is a serious instrument, and it is treated with a seriousness that our own pockets, full of endless connection, have entirely forgotten. The party line shapes how the family uses it. You lift the receiver and listen first, and often as not you hear the murmur of a neighbour already mid-conversation, and you set it gently back down and wait your turn. There is an etiquette to it. unspoken but firmly understood, that you do not linger on the line when others might need it, that you do not listen in on a neighbour's talk, however tempting. Though everyone knows it sometimes happens. The line is shared, and sharing it well is a small daily practice in courtesy, in patience, in thinking of the household down the street as well as your own. Each family on the line has its own ring, a pattern of long and short that tells you whether the call is for your house or the neighbour's, and you learn to know yours the way you know a voice. When it sounds, you answer, and when it is the other pattern, you leave it be. It is a curious intimacy, this sharing of a single wire among several households, a reminder that in this era the boundaries between families were softer and more neighbourly than the sealed private lines we would later come to expect. You are connected quite literally to the people around you. Long distance is where the real cost lives, and so it is used sparingly with a sense of occasion. A call to a relative in another state is an event, planned for, kept short, the whole family gathered near to take a turn saying a few words before the minutes add up to something the budget would rather not spend. You learn to say what matters, and to say it quickly. To pack a week of news into a couple of careful minutes, because every minute has a price and the price is watched. It makes those far-off voices precious, rationed, savoured in a way that our endless free calling never quite allows. For the everyday, there are letters, cheaper by far, a 3-cent stamp carrying a whole page of news across the country, for less than the phone would cost for a moment. The telephone is saved for what cannot wait, and the letter carries the rest, and between them the family stays in touch with the wider world at a cost it can manage. There is a patience built into this, a willingness to wait days for a reply that we, with our instant messages, can scarcely imagine anymore. But the waiting made the arrival sweeter, and a letter in the box was a small joy a text will never match. The monthly bill, when it comes, is modest, a few dollars for the line, and whatever long distance was truly necessary, and your mother enters it in the ledger without alarm because the family has kept its calling in check. It is one of the smaller lines in the whole budget, but it is watched all the same because everything is watched, and because a phone used carelessly could grow into an expense the tight envelope could not absorb. There is something worth mourning quietly in what we traded for our constant connection. The telephone in the hall, used with purpose and shared with neighbours, made every conversation deliberate, every far-off voice a small event. We can reach anyone now, instantly, for nothing, and yet we say less that matters, scatter our words carelessly, take the miracle of it entirely for granted. Your family, keeping its calls short and close to home, knew something we have forgotten, that a thing rationed is a thing valued. And so the black telephone waits in the hall, silent most of the day, ready to carry a voice across the wire when a voice is truly needed, and no sooner. It cost the family little, because they made it cost little, using it with the same care they gave to the light and the bread and the meat. And you carry with you the memory of it sitting there, patient and important, a slower and gentler way of reaching out, and the quiet understanding that when connection has a price, every voice down the line becomes something genuinely worth the cost. There is a knock at the door most weeks, gentle and expected. It is the insurance man, making his rounds, collecting a small premium in person, a quarter here, 50 cents there, marked down in a little book he keeps and a matching one your mother keeps. This is how a family guards against the worst, a few coins at a time, building a modest policy that might one day help with a funeral or a hospital stay. He is a familiar face, part salesman, part neighbour, and his visit is one of the small rituals that stitch the week together. Peace of mind, it turns out, is bought in instalments too. He comes on the same day most weeks, at about the same hour, so that your mother has the coins ready and set aside in their own small envelope before he ever raises his hand to the door. There's no surprise in his arrival, only the comfortable predictability of a thing that has happened many times and will happen many times more. He wipes his feet on the mat, removes his hat, and steps just inside the door, and there is always a moment of pleasant talk before any money changes hands, because in this world a transaction is never only a transaction. The two little books are the heart of it, his and hers, and they must always agree. He opens his to the page with your family's name and records the payment in a neat column, and your mother brings out her matching book and he marks that one too, so that both sides hold an identical record of every coin ever paid. There is a trust in this arrangement, but it is a trust made solid by paper, each payment witnessed and written twice, so that no one need ever wonder or argue about what has been paid and what still stands owing. The amounts are small, almost comically so by the measure of what they are meant to protect against. A quarter, perhaps, or 50 cents, dropped into his palm and marked in the book, hardly seems like a bulwark against the great catastrophes of life. But your mother understands what the coins are quietly building. Week by week, payment by payment, they are assembling a modest policy, a sum that will be there when it is desperately needed, when there is a funeral to pay for or a hospital bill that would otherwise swallow the family whole. The little coins are seeds, and what they grow into is security. This is how a family of ordinary means guards its future in an age with almost no safety net beneath it. There is no cushion from the government to catch them if disaster strikes, no expectation that the worst will somehow be handled by someone else. If a breadwinner falls ill, if death comes early, the family must face the cost alone, and so they prepare for it the only way they can, a few coins at a time, faithfully, for years. The insurance man is the collector of that preparation, and his weekly visit is a small act of foresight repeated until it adds up to real protection. He is more than a collector, though, and everyone treats him as more. He knows the family, has watched the children grow, remembers to ask after the grandmother who was poorly last winter. He carries news, sometimes, of other families on his route, and offers a kind word or a bit of advice, and lingers just long enough to be neighbourly without overstaying. In a neighbourhood knit together by these regular callers, the milkman and the baker and the insurance man, he is one more thread, one more familiar presence who makes the world feel smaller and safer and more known. You watch your mother hand over the coins and receive the mark in the book, and you absorb, without being told, the lesson buried in the ritual. Security is not a thing you buy all at once, not a thing that arrives whole and finished. It is built slowly, in tiny faithful increments, by people disciplined enough to set aside a little, even when a little is all they have. The quarter given to the insurance man could have bought something today, something small and pleasant, and instead it was given up for a tomorrow that might never come but must be planned for all the same. There is a wistfulness in remembering it now, this personal, patient way of guarding against the future. Our own protections come to us impersonally, drafted from accounts by companies we never meet, and there is no friendly face at the door, no shared book, no moment of neighbourly talk folded into the paying. Something warm has gone out of the arrangement, even as the arrangement itself has grown larger and more certain. The insurance man knew your name and your worries, and that knowing was part of what you paid for, though it never appeared in either book. When he has marked the payment and pocketed the coins, he settles his hat back on his head, offers a final pleasant word, and steps out into his rounds again, off to the next door and the next small payment. Your mother closes her little book and returns it to the drawer beside the ledger, one more record of one more week, faithfully kept. And you carry with you the quiet wisdom of it, that a family with almost nothing to spare could still, coin by patient coin, build a wall against the worst that life might bring, and that peace of mind, like everything else in this careful house, was bought slowly, honestly, and in instalments small enough to manage. Let us walk down to the bank now, on an errand your mother makes without fail. She has a Christmas Club account, a special little savings plan where $1 or $2 is set aside every week all year long. The teller stamps her passbook, the small blue booklet that records each deposit in neat ink, and the total grows slowly through spring and summer and fall. By December, there is a lump sum waiting, just enough for presents and a good dinner and something extra under the tree. It is saving made into a habit, a discipline dressed up as a tradition, and it teaches a lesson our instant world has nearly forgotten, that good things are worth waiting for. The bank itself is a place of some solemnity, cool and quiet, with high ceilings and polished floors and the hushed murmur of serious business being done. Your mother walks in with her $1 or $2 folded small in her glove, and she waits her turn in line without impatience, because this errand is a pleasure to her as much as a duty. When she reaches the window, the teller greets her by name, and there is a brief, warm exchange before the passbook is slid across the counter and the small deposit is made and recorded. The passbook is the whole magic of it, a slim blue booklet that fits in the palm and holds within it the growing proof of a year's patience. Each week the teller enters the new amount and stamps it, and the running total climbs a line at a time, and your mother reads that total each visit with a private satisfaction that no purchase could ever match. To see the number grow, week upon week, is to watch her own discipline made visible, a record of every small sacrifice adding up to something real. The booklet is thin, but what it represents is substantial. What makes the Christmas Club so clever is that it turns saving, which is hard, into tradition, which is easy. A person might struggle to set money aside for no reason but prudence, might find 100 better uses for it in any given week. But saving toward Christmas, toward the joy of giving and the warmth of a good family dinner, is a thing the heart takes to gladly. The season at the end gives the discipline its purpose, and so the $1 goes in each week not grudgingly but happily, an act of love as much as of thrift. The genius of it is also that the money once given to the bank is hard to take back. That is rather the point. Tucked into the Christmas Club, it is out of reach of the ordinary temptations of the week, safe from the small emergencies and smaller cravings that might otherwise nibble it away. Your mother could not raid it if she wanted to, not without effort and explanation, and so it survives where money kept at home in a jar might not. The bank becomes, in effect, a guardian of her good intentions, holding her savings safe from her own weaker moments. Through the long middle of the year, the account is a quiet promise, growing steadily while the seasons turn. In spring it is a modest little sum, in summer a bit more, in autumn something worth thinking about, and all the while December waits at the end like a reward-gathering wait. Your mother does not touch it, does not fret over it, only adds to it faithfully and lets the months do their slow work. There is a peace in that kind of saving, in knowing the future is being provided for a little at a time, without strain, without struggle. And then December comes, and the account is emptied all at once into a lump sum that feels, after a year of dollars, like a small fortune. There is money for presents for each of the children, chosen with care and paid for without debt. There is money for a good dinner, a proper bird and all that goes with it, a table more generous than any other day of the year allows. There is even a little something extra, an unlooked-for treat, because the year of patience has yielded just enough to be not only sufficient but glad. The joy of that December is built entirely on the discipline of all the months before it. You come to understand, watching this yearly cycle, a truth at our own age is very nearly lost. Good things are worth waiting for. The pleasure of a Christmas paid for in advance, given freely and without the shadow of bills to come, is a deeper pleasure than any bought on impulse and regretted later. Your mother knew how to want something, and then patiently, gladly, over the course of a whole year, make herself able to have it. That knowing is a kind of wealth, and it has nothing to do with how much money passes through the little blue book. We reach now for what we want the moment we want it, borrowing against tomorrow to satisfy today, and the Christmas Club feels almost quaint against that impatience, a relic of a slower and more deliberate time. But there was wisdom in the slowness, and joy in the waiting, and a lesson in every stamped line of that passbook worth carrying forward, and you keep with you the image of your mother at the teller's window, sliding her folded dollar across the counter, building the coming Christmas one patient week at a time, and the quiet understanding that the best gifts are often the ones a whole year of care has gone into. Out in the driveway sits the family car, and it too must be fed. Gasoline runs somewhere around a quarter or a little more for a gallon, and the attendant at the service station pumps it for you, checks the oil, wipes the windshield, all with a smile and no extra charge. The car is not driven carelessly. Trips are planned, errands combined, and a long Sunday drive is a small luxury weighed against the cost. Filling the tank is a modest expense by today's measure, but in a house where every envelope has a limit, even the open road is something you budget for, mile by careful mile. The car is a source of real pride, a thing your family may have saved toward for years, and it is treated with a corresponding care. It is not a machine to be used thoughtlessly, run here and there on any whim, but a valuable possession to be maintained and driven wisely. Your father washes it on Saturdays, checks its fluids, listens to its engine the way a doctor listens to a chest, because a well-kept car lasts longer, and a car that lasts longer is money saved. Every mile it travels is a mile paid for, and so every mile is a mile considered. The service station is a small theatre of courtesy in these years, and pulling in is a pleasant thing. You do not pump your own gas. An attendant comes out to the car, greets your father by name if it is the usual station, and sets to work filling the tank while he lifts the hood to check the oil and the water, then circles round to wipe the windshield clean of dust and bugs. All of it comes with the gasoline, no extra charge, no expectation of anything but the price of the fuel, and perhaps a word of thanks. It is service in the fullest sense, and it makes the modest expense feel almost like a small indulgence. Because the fuel costs money, the driving is planned. Your mother saves up her errands so that a single trip can accomplish several things, the market and the bank and the visit to a relative, all folded into one outing rather than scattered across the week. There is no running out for a single forgotten item, no casual driving for its own sake, because casual driving burns gasoline, and gasoline is a line in the ledger. The family thinks in terms of routes and combinations, wringing the most from each tankful, the same careful economy that governs the bread and the meat applied now to the open road. And yet, for all the care, there is the Sunday drive, and the Sunday drive is one of the great affordable pleasures of the age. When the week's work is done and the family is scrubbed and rested, your father may decide that the afternoon is fine enough for an outing, and everyone piles into the car with a sense of occasion. There is nowhere in particular to go. That is the whole beauty of it. You drive out past the edge of town, into the countryside, past farms and fields and other families out doing the very same thing, and the going is the point, not the arriving. The cost of it is weighed, of course, as everything is weighed, a few gallons of gasoline set against the pleasure it buys, but the pleasure is real, and the cost is modest, and your parents judge it worth the price more often than not, because a family needs its joys as surely as it needs its bread. The Sunday drive is entertainment for the whole household at the price of a little fuel, a way to see the wider world, to feel the wind through the open windows, to be together and going somewhere without needing to spend on anything grander. In a careful budget, that is a bargain indeed. You remember these drives all your life, the particular feeling of the afternoon light slanting across the fields, the murmur of your parents talking in the front seat, the younger children dozing beside you as the miles unspooled. There was a peace in it, an unhurried contentment that our own frantic driving, always towards some destination, always against some clock, rarely allows. The car in that era was not only transportation but recreation, and the family used it for both, wisely and gladly, according to what the envelope would bear. It is strange to think how much has changed in the simple act of buying gasoline. The attendant is gone, the windshield goes unwiped, the oil unchecked, and we pump our own fuel in a hurry and drive off without a word exchanged. We drive without thinking, for any reason and no reason, and the careful planning of routes and the special pleasure of a Sunday drive have alike faded into memory. Something companionable went out of the road when the driving became so easy and so constant that it stopped feeling like anything at all. But here, in 1955, the family car waits in the driveway, valued and maintained, fed 1/4 gallon by a smiling attendant and driven with the same thoughtfulness given to every other precious thing. Its errands are planned, its miles are counted, and now and then, when the week has allowed it, it carries the whole family out into the countryside for an afternoon of going nowhere in particular together. And you carry with you the warmth of those Sunday drives, the modest luxury of the open road bought by the careful gallon, and the quiet lesson that even freedom, even the wide world beyond the town, was something a wise family budgeted for and enjoyed all the more for having earned. It is a weekday evening, and your mother sits by the lamp with a needle and thread. New clothes are bought rarely and chosen to last, so much of the family wardrobe is kept alive by hand, hems let down as children grow, elbows patched, buttons replaced, socks darned into a second life. Hand-me-downs pass from the oldest to the youngest without shame. A good coat is expected to serve for years. There is real skill in this, and real thrift, a whole quiet economy of the sewing basket that most of us have traded for the ease of buying new. Here, a garment is mended because it can be, and because every dollar saved has somewhere else to go. The sewing basket sits beside her chair, a woven thing full of small treasures, spools of thread in every colour, a pincushion bristling like a little hedgehog, a jar of buttons saved from garments long since worn out, scraps of cloth kept for patches. She reaches into it without looking, her hands knowing exactly where each thing lives, and she settles into the evening's mending with the ease of long practice. This is not a chore she resents. It is a quiet time, almost meditative, the small, steady work of the needle done while the family talks or the radio plays softly in the corner. You watch her turn a worn shirt inside out to find the weak spot, the place where the fabric has thinned or torn, and set to work reinforcing it so it will serve another season. A patch is cut from the scrap bag, matched as near as she can to the colour and weave, and stitched down so neatly that it nearly disappears. An elbow gone through is mended the same way, and a collar frayed at the edge is turned so the worn part hides underneath. These are the tricks of a whole tradition of make-do, passed mother to daughter, each one squeezing more life from a garment that a wasteful hand would simply throw away. The children grow, as children do, and their clothes must grow with them or be handed down. Your mother lets out hems she once took up, revealing the good cloth she was careful to leave when she first shortened them, so that a dress or a pair of trousers can lengthen along with the child who wears it. And when a garment is finally outgrown past all lengthening, it does not leave the family but moves down it, passed from the oldest child to the next and the next, worn by each in turn until it is truly worn out. There is no shame in this, only sense, and the younger children think nothing of wearing what the older ones wore before them. The socks are their own small labour, and one your mother returns to again and again, because socks wear through at the heel and the toe faster than anything else. She keeps a darning egg, a smooth wooden ovoid slipped inside the sock to hold its shape, and over it she weaves the thread back and forth across the hole, building a new patch of fabric where the old wore away. It is fiddly, patient work, and a store-bought sock would be so simple to buy instead. But a darned sock costs only a few minutes and a length of thread, and those few minutes are cheaper than the coins a new pair would take. When new clothes must be bought, and sometimes they must, the buying is done with great care, an eye always to durability and room to grow. A coat is chosen a little large, so it will last through more than one winter, and made of good wool that will not wear out too soon. Shoes are bought sturdy and kept polished and resoled when the soles go thin, because good shoes well cared for outlast cheap ones many times over. Every purchase is judged not by its price alone, but by how long it will serve, and a thing that lasts is always the better bargain, however much more it costs at the start. There is real skill in all of this, though your mother would never call it that. To mend well, to patch invisibly, to darn a sock so it is comfortable again, to know how to make a garment last twice as long as it otherwise might, these are genuine crafts, learned over years and practiced until they become second nature. They saved the family real money week upon week, and they were a source of quiet pride besides, the satisfaction of keeping a household well clothed, on very little through nothing but care and cleverness, and the steady work of a needle by lamplight. We have lost these skills almost entirely, and lost the habits of mind behind them too. Clothing has become so cheap and so plentiful that we hardly bother to mend it, tossing out a garment for a missing button or a small tear that 10 minutes with a needle would set right. We buy new without thinking, wear a thing a season and discard it, and the sewing basket has vanished from most homes along with the patience it required. Something thrifty and skillful and even beautiful went out of ordinary life when the needle was set aside. But here, in the lamplight, your mother stitches on, keeping the family's clothes alive one careful repair at a time, and there is a whole philosophy of living folded into that simple act. A thing is not thrown away while it can still be used. $1 saved on clothing is $1 freed for something that matters more, and you carry with you the memory of her there by the lamp, needle rising and falling, and the quiet lesson that a family can be well dressed and well cared for on almost nothing, if only there are hands willing to mend and the humble wisdom to know that most things are worth saving. Gather round the kitchen table for a different kind of shopping. The Sears catalogue lands like a book of wonders, hundreds of pages of everything a family could want, from work boots to washing machines. But wanting is not the same as buying, so when something big is needed, your mother turns to layaway. The store sets the item aside and the family pays it down a little, each week until it is finally fully theirs. No debt, no interest, just patience made into a plan. There is a particular joy in that last payment, in carrying home a thing you have already earned in full. It is the opposite of the one-click world, and it makes the having sweeter. The catalogue itself is an event when it arrives, thick as a phone book and twice as heavy, and the children fall upon it the moment it comes into the house. Its pages hold everything, quite literally everything, tools and toys and clothing and furniture, stoves and sewing machines and bicycles, all of it drawn or photographed and described in careful words with the price printed plainly beside. To turn its pages is to wander through a great store without leaving the kitchen, and the family does exactly that. gathered around the table on a winter evening, pointing and dreaming and marking the things they wish for. But your mother has taught you the crucial difference, gently and by example, between wishing for a thing and buying it. The catalogue is full of wonders, and wonders cost money, and money is the one thing this house never has in surplus. So the wishing is a pleasure kept firmly separate from the spending, and a child may dream over the bicycle on page 200 without any expectation that the dream will arrive by post next week. Wanting is free, and a good deal of the catalogue's joy lies precisely in the wanting, in the imagining of what might someday be. When something is truly needed, though, something big, a winter coat or a set of tools or the washing machine that would save your mother so many hours over the tub, then the family turns to layaway, and layaway is a small miracle of sensible finance. Your mother places the order and the store sets the item aside with your family's name on it, holding it safe on a shelf in the back, and then the paying begins. A little each week, $1 or $2 carried to the counter and marked against the total. The thing is not yet yours, but it is promised to you, waiting, drawing closer with every payment. The beauty of layaway is that it lets a family of modest means afford the larger things without ever falling into the trap of debt. There is no borrowing here, no interest quietly swelling the price, no bill arriving later with more owed than the thing was worth. You pay for what you buy before you take it home, in installments you can manage, and when the last payment is made, the item is yours completely, owned free and clear, owing nothing to anyone. It is a way of reaching the bigger purchases through patience rather than through debt, and it fits this careful household perfectly. The waiting is long sometimes, weeks or even months of small payments before the total is met, and there is a discipline in keeping to it, in bringing the dollar faithfully each week even when other things tug at the envelope. But the discipline is easier for having a clear reward at its end. The same way the Christmas Club is easier for the joy it promises. Each payment is a step closer, and your mother marks the progress with quiet satisfaction, watching the balance shrink towards zero as the weeks go by, the treasured thing drawing nearer all the while. And then comes the day of the last payment, and there is a particular joy in it that our own instant buying can never quite match. You go to the counter and hand over the final dollar, and the clerk marks the total paid in full, and the thing is brought out from the back and placed into your hands, and it is yours, entirely yours, earned and paid for and owed to no one. To carry it home is to carry home not just an object, but a small triumph, the proof of weeks of patience rewarded. The having is sweeter for the waiting, richer for the earning, in a way that a thing bought on a whim can never be. It is very nearly the opposite of how we shop now, in a world where anything can be had in a moment with the tap of a finger, and the thing arrives at the door before the wanting has even had time to settle. We buy instantly and pay later, and the goods pile up around us, easily got and lightly valued, and the old pleasures of anticipation and earning have all but vanished. There was a wisdom in the slowness that we have traded away, and a joy in it too, the joy of a thing long awaited finally arriving. But here, at the kitchen table with the great catalogue open under the lamp, the family dreams over its pages and plans its few careful purchases the patient way, through layaway and steady payment, wanting freely and buying wisely and owing nothing at the end. And you carry with you the particular happiness of that last payment, the treasure carried home fully earned, and the quiet lesson that the sweetest possessions are often the ones we waited longest and worked hardest to hold, paid down $1 honest at a time. Let us not forget the youngest members of the household, who are learning the value of $1 in the smallest possible amounts. An allowance here might be a nickel or a dime a week, earned by chores, sweeping the walk or taking out the ash can. It is not much, but it is everything to a child, enough for a comic book or a handful of penny candy or, if saved, something greater down the line. Parents use these coins to teach the lessons the whole house lives by, that money is worked for, chosen carefully, and never quite as plentiful as the wanting. The habits formed at this age tend to last a lifetime. The allowance is not simply given, and that is the whole point of it. It is earned, tied to real work, so that from the very start a child understands that money and effort are bound together, that coins do not appear by magic but come as the reward for something done. You sweep the front walk or carry out the ashes from the stove or beat the dust from the rugs on the line, and at the end of the week your father counts a nickel or a dime into your open palm, and the small weight of it in your hand is the weight of your own labour made real. To a child, that nickel is a fortune, and the deciding of how to spend it is a matter of the greatest seriousness. You stand before the candy counter at the corner store, the coin warm in your fist, and you weigh your choices with an intensity that no grown-up purchase will ever quite recapture. A whole penny's worth of one thing, or a penny each of several. The comic book that would take the entire dime, or the smaller pleasures that would leave a few coins over. It is your money, earned by your own hands, and the choosing of what to do with it is a genuine exercise of will and want and wisdom, all in miniature. And here is where the deepest lesson lives quietly in that moment of choosing. For the coin can only be spent once, and to spend it on the candy is to not have it for the comic, and to spend it on either is to not save it for the something greater that patience might one day buy. A child learns, in the smallest possible terms, the truth that governs the whole household, that money is finite, that every choice forecloses another, that having a thing means giving up the chance at something else. It is the envelope system in miniature, taught not in words but in the plain arithmetic of a single small coin. Some children spend the nickel the moment it touches their hand, and learn thereby the swift lesson of the empty pocket, the long week ahead with nothing left to spend. Others, the savers, drop it into a jar or a small bank and watch it join its fellows, learning instead the slower, sweeter lesson of the sum that grows, of the patience that eventually buys something a single week's allowance never could. Neither lesson is taught by lecture. Both are taught by the coin itself, by the simple experience of having it and then choosing, and both stay with a child far longer than any parent's words. The parents watch this learning with a knowing eye, resisting the urge to rescue a child from a foolish choice, because the foolish choice is itself the teacher. To spend all one's money on candy and then want for the rest of the week is a small suffering, but it is a useful one, a lesson in consequence learned cheaply now that will spare a costlier version of the same lesson later. Your mother and father understand this, and so they let the coin do its work, let the child feel the full result of the choice, trusting that the habits formed over a jar of nickels will hold good over a lifetime of larger sums. There is something touching in how much these tiny amounts came to mean, how a single dime could hold so much possibility in a child's imagination. A dime was a trip to the picture show, or a comic book, or a good long while spent choosing at the candy counter, or the first small stone in a tower of savings. The smallness of the money was exactly what made it such a good teacher, because the stakes were low enough to be safe and yet high enough to a child to feel entirely real. Every lesson of the grown-up ledger was there in that dime, scaled down to a size a child could hold and understand. We have grown clumsier at this, perhaps, in an age where money to children comes more easily and means less, where the connection between work and reward has thinned, and where the coin itself, warm in the fist, has begun to vanish into cards and screens a child cannot feel the weight of. There was a clarity in the old way, in the earned nickel counted into the open hand, that our own arrangements struggle to match. The lesson landed harder when the money was real and small and truly one's own. But here, in this careful house, the children earn their nickels and dimes by honest work and learn, coin by coin, the whole philosophy the household lives by. They learn that money is worked for, that it is finite, that choosing one thing means giving up another, and that patience sometimes buys the greatest treasures of all. And you carry with you the memory of that first earned coin, warm in your small fist, and the weighty pleasure of deciding what it should become, and the quiet understanding that the biggest lessons of a lifetime were first learned over the smallest sums at the candy counter with a nickel that felt like the whole wide world. It is Sunday morning now, and the family sits together in a wooden pew. When the collection plate comes down the row, your father adds a folded bill or a few coins, a portion set aside from a paycheck that already has more claims than dollars. Giving is not an afterthought here. It is written into the week the same as rent and groceries, a small envelope of its own perhaps, offered from limited means with a kind of quiet faith. There is a grace in that, in a family that has so little to spare choosing to share some of it anyway. It says something about what they believe money is truly for. The church is cool and quiet in the morning, the light coming soft through the windows, and the family sits close together in the pew, the way they sit close together everywhere, a small warm unit in the larger gathering of the neighbourhood. Everyone is scrubbed and in their good clothes, the same good clothes kept careful through the week for exactly this. And there is a stillness and a seriousness to the hour that the children feel, even when they do not fully understand it. This is a time set apart, and the giving that happens within it is set apart too. The plate comes down the row passed hand to hand, and when it reaches your father he adds his offering without fanfare, a folded bill perhaps, or a small stack of coins counted out at home and carried here for this purpose. It is not a large sum. It cannot be, in a household where the paycheck is already spoken for many times over before it ever comes home. But it is given all the same, faithfully, week upon week, and the smallness of it does not diminish it. If anything, the smallness makes it larger, because it is given from a want rather than from plenty. Your mother has set it aside in advance, very likely, in its own small envelope in the drawer beside the rest, because in this house the giving is planned like everything else. It is not a leftover, not whatever happens to remain in the pocket when the plate comes round, but a portion decided upon and reserved before the week's spending ever begins. That is the deepest sign of how seriously they take it, that the offering has its place in the ledger alongside the rent and the groceries, a fixed and honoured line rather than an afterthought scraped together at the last moment. There is a quiet faith in this that runs deeper than the coins themselves. To give from a tight budget is to trust that giving matters, that a family is meant to share in the wider life around it, even when sharing means going with a little less. Your parents believe, without needing to say so, that money is not only for keeping and spending on themselves, that some part of it is meant to flow outward, to the church and the community and those worse off than they. And so they give, gladly, and the giving shapes the children's understanding of what wealth, however small, is finally for. The plate carries the offerings of the whole neighbourhood, and there is a kind of communion in that too, apart from any doctrine, the sense that all these families of modest means are pooling their little together into something that can do more than any one of them alone. The coins and folded bills add up, across the whole congregation, into support for the building and the minister, and the works of care the church carries out. Each family gives what it can, and no one measures another, and the collective result is a fund that binds the community and serves it, built from many small acts of the same quiet generosity. You watch your father drop the offering into the plate and pass it on, and you absorb, as you absorb so much in this house, a lesson never spoken aloud. Giving is not something done only by those with plenty to spare. It is something done by everyone, according to what they have, and a family that gives from little gives more truly in a sense than a family that gives from much. The habit of open-handedness, planted early in the weekly passing of the plate, becomes part of who you are, a settled conviction that you're meant to share whatever you have been given. There is a grace in it, a genuine grace that has grown rarer in our own more guarded age. We hold our money closer now, perhaps, more anxious about the future, more inclined to see what we have as ours alone to keep. The idea of writing generosity into the budget as a fixed and cheerful line, of giving faithfully from a paycheck already stretched thin, can seem almost imprudent by our careful reckoning. But there was a richness in that imprudence, a spiritual solvency that no ledger measures, and the families who practiced it were poorer in dollars, and yet, in some real way, more abundant. And so, on Sunday morning, the plate comes down the row, and your father adds his small faithful offering, and the family gives from its little, without hesitation or regret. It is a portion set aside in advance, honoured like every other obligation, offered in quiet faith that money is meant to be shared as well as saved. And you carry with you the memory of that plate passing hand to hand, and the sight of your father giving from a paycheck that had no surplus to give, and the deep quiet lesson that generosity is not the privilege of the wealthy, but the practice of the good, and that a family with almost nothing can still be rich in the giving of it. Let us talk gently about the times someone falls ill. In this era, the doctor still makes house calls, arriving with a black leather bag, and the visit costs only a few dollars, paid directly into his hand. Medicine comes from the corner druggist, who knows the family and might extend a little credit until Friday. There is no insurance card to hand over, so illness is a real line in the budget, watched with worry as much as care. A serious sickness can strain a family for months. It reminds you how much of that careful saving was really a kind of shield, held up against the days when the body and the ledger would need it most. When a child takes a fever in the night, or a cough settles deep and will not lift, the doctor is called, and in these years the doctor comes to you. He arrives at the door with his black bag in hand, a figure of great authority and great comfort both, and he climbs the stairs to the sick room and sits at the bedside and does his careful work. There is something reassuring in that, in the healer coming into your own home, into the very room where the illness lies, rather than the sick being hauled out to some distant office to wait among strangers. The house call brings the medicine to where it is needed and brings calm with it. His fee is a few dollars, paid directly into his hand at the end of the visit, and there is a plainness to that exchange that our own tangled arrangements have entirely lost. No forms, no cards, no bills arriving weeks later from offices you never saw. Just a doctor and a family and a modest sum handed over in thanks for care given. The amount is not trivial to a household counting every coin, but it is knowable, straightforward, a cost you can see and understand and plan around, and there is a dignity in paying it so directly. The medicine comes from the corner druggist, another familiar figure in the web of neighbours who serve the street. He stands behind his counter among the bottles and the powders, and he knows your family, knows the children by name, and when your mother comes in worried with a prescription in her hand, he fills it with care and a kind word, and if the week has been hard, if the envelope for such things is thin, he might let the payment wait until Friday, extending a little quiet credit on nothing more than his knowledge of the family and his trust that they are good for it. That trust is its own kind of currency, and it flows through the whole neighborhood, from the druggist to the grocer to the doctor himself. These are not distant institutions, but people who know you, and in knowing you they can bend a little when bending is needed, carry a family through a hard patch, wait for the money until the money comes. It is a safety net woven not of policy but of relationship, of the simple human fact of being known, and it caught many a family in a lean week who might otherwise have gone without the medicine a sick child needed. But for all these kindnesses, illness remains one of the great fears of the household, and rightly so, because there is no card to hand over, no insurance to absorb the blow of a serious sickness. A fever that passes in a few days is one thing, a few dollars for the doctor, and a bottle from the druggist and the worry soon over. But a real illness, a long one, an operation or a hospital stay, can strain a family for months or longer, eating through the savings and beyond, casting a shadow over the whole careful budget. This is the danger that lurks behind all the thrift, the thing that all the saving is finally guarding against. And so you come to understand why your mother is so faithful with the insurance man's coins, so determined to keep the savings envelope from ever going empty, so careful in every corner of the ledger. It is not thrift for its own sake. It is a shield, patiently built, held up against the day when the body fails and the ledger must somehow bear it. The careful saving of the good weeks is what makes the bad weeks survivable, and every dollar tucked away is a small act of preparation for a trouble that may come without warning. The whole discipline of the household is, in the end, a defence against exactly this. There is a weight to living without the safety we now take for granted, a low steady worry that our own age, for all its complaints, has largely been spared. To know that a single serious illness could undo years of careful saving is to carry a burden that shaped every financial choice these families made, and yet they carried it with a certain steadiness, meeting the fear not with panic but with preparation, building their small defences coin by coin and trusting to the kindness of neighbours for the rest. So when illness comes, as it always eventually does, the doctor climbs the stairs with his black bag, and the druggist fills the bottle and waits until Friday if he must, and the family draws on the shield it has so patiently built. The cost of getting well is a real line in the ledger, watched with worry as much as care. And you carry with you a deepened understanding of all that careful saving, the knowledge that behind every mended sock and every counted coin stood a quiet readiness for the hard days, and that a family's thrift was, at its heart, an act of love, a shield held up against the times when the body and the budget would need it most. Now for the lighter side of the ledger, because even a careful family knows the week needs its pleasures. On a Saturday, a trip to the picture show costs only a handful of coins, and for a few hours the whole family disappears into a world larger than their own. A bottle of Coca-Cola from the machine is a nickel, a bag of popcorn, a treat worth remembering. These are not extravagances, but small, deliberate joys, budgeted for and looked forward to all week. It is a reminder that happiness in the 1950s did not require very much money at all, only a little time set aside and the willingness to enjoy it fully. The picture show on a Saturday is one of the great affordable delights of the age, and the anticipation of it colours the whole week leading up. The theatre downtown is a palace by the standards of ordinary life, its lobby grand, its ceiling high, its screen enormous, and to pass through its doors is to leave the small, careful world of the budget behind for a couple of glorious hours. A handful of coins buys admission, less for the children, and once inside the money spent is forgotten in the wonder of it, the lights going down, the curtain drawing back, the story swelling up larger than life. The Coca-Cola is a nickel, and a nickel well spent, drawn cold and fizzing from the machine and carried carefully to your seat. There is a particular pleasure in a bottle of Coke at the pictures, the sweetness and the sting of it, the cold glass sweating in your hand, and it is savoured slowly to make it last through the show. A bag of popcorn, if the budget stretches to it, is a treat worth remembering for weeks. The smell of it filling the theatre, the warm, salty handfuls doled out among the children. These are small things, costing almost nothing, and yet they loom large in the memory of a childhood, precisely because they came rarely enough to feel special. That is the secret of the small joys, and your parents understood it well. Because the treats came seldom, they were treasured, looked forward to, enjoyed with a fullness that constant abundance can never allow. The child who goes to the pictures every day soon finds it ordinary, but the child who goes on a Saturday, having waited all week for it, having earned it, having watched it approach on the calendar, that child tastes the whole sweetness of it. The scarcity is not a deprivation, but a kind of seasoning, making the pleasure richer for being rare. And these joys were budgeted for, planned like everything else, a small envelope or a set-aside handful of coins reserved for the family's entertainment. Your mother did not begrudge them. She knew that a family cannot live on bread and thrift alone, that the spirit needs its pleasures as surely as the body needs its food, and so she made room in the tight ledger for a little happiness, deliberately, week upon week. The picture show and the nickel coke were not indulgences that threatened the budget, but a recognised and honoured part of it, proof that even a careful household knew the value of joy. For a few hours in the dark theatre, the whole family disappears together into a world larger than their own, and the everyday cares fall away. There is a togetherness in it, all of them side by side in the flickering light, sharing the same story, laughing at the same moments, and that togetherness is as much the point as the film itself. It costs only a handful of coins, and it gives back an afternoon of shared wonder and a week's worth of anticipation. Besides, and by any honest accounting that is a bargain of the very finest kind, it is worth marvelling at how little that happiness required. No great sums, no elaborate arrangements, only a walk downtown and a few coins, and the willingness to give oneself fully to the pleasure at hand. Happiness in this era was not something you had to be wealthy to afford. It was woven from small, cheap, deliberate joys, a picture show, and a cold bottle of Coke, and the warm company of family, and it was all the sweeter for costing so little and coming so rarely. We have grown rich in entertainments now, and strangely poorer in the pleasure of them, with endless amusement always at hand and little of it treasured, nothing waited for, nothing quite special because everything is always available. Something has thinned in our joy as it has multiplied, the anticipation gone, the savouring lost, the small deliberate pleasures drowned in constant plenty. The nickel coke tasted better, in the end, than all our endless abundance, because it was waited for and paid for and truly enjoyed. But here, on a Saturday in 1955, the family walks downtown to the picture show, coins counted carefully in a pocket, and for a few hours they disappear together into a larger world, a cold Coke sweating in each hand, a bag of popcorn passed down the row. It is a small joy, budgeted for and long awaited, and it fills the whole week with something to look forward to and something to remember. And you carry with you the sweetness of it, the flickering light, and the fizzing bottle, and the family close around you in the dark, and the quiet lesson that the greatest happiness was never a matter of money at all, only of time set aside and the willingness to enjoy it fully. Let us look at the little things, the daily coins that slip out almost without notice. There is the coffee your parents drink every morning, bought by the pound and measured out with care. There is the pack of cigarettes, a quarter or so, so ordinary in this era that no one thinks twice. A newspaper is a few pennies at the corner stand. A stamp costs 3 cents to send a letter across the country. None of these amount to much on their own, but your mother knows they add up, and she keeps a quiet eye on them in the margins of her ledger, because a budget is won or lost in exactly these small and easily forgotten places. The coffee is the first of them, the morning ritual that anchors the household's day. It is bought by the pound, ground fresh or ground at the store, and measured into the pot with a care that reflects its cost. For good coffee is not cheap, and a family that drinks it daily must account for it. The smell of it fills the kitchen before dawn, rich and dark and reviving, and your parents take their cups at the table before the work of the day begins. It is a small pleasure and a real expense both, and your mother tracks the pounds as they empty, folding the coffee into the budget as faithfully as the bread. The cigarettes are simply part of the landscape of the age, a pack costing a quarter or so, bought as automatically as anything else, smoked by nearly everyone without a second thought. No one yet knows what later years will reveal about them, and they are woven so thoroughly into daily life that they scarcely register as a choice at all. Your father may smoke, your mother too, and the quarters spent on the packs disappear into the week's small outflow, like water into sand. It is only in the margins of the ledger that they show their true weight, adding up week by week into a sum larger than any single pack ever suggested. The newspaper is a few pennies at the corner stand, bought daily or nearly so, and it is one of the great bargains of the household, the whole world delivered in newsprint for the smallest of coins. The stamp is 3 cents, a trifling amount that carries a letter clear across the country, keeping the family connected to distant relations far more cheaply than the telephone ever could. These are tiny expenses, the very smallest lines in the ledger, and it would be easy to overlook them entirely, to treat them as too small to matter. But your mother knows better, and this is the heart of the whole segment's lesson. She understands, as every good manager of a tight budget understands, that it is precisely the small and unnoticed expenses that undo a family's careful planning. A quarter here and a few pennies there, spent without thought, day after day, add up over a week and a month and a year into real money, into sums that could have filled the savings envelope or bought something that mattered more. The big expenses announce themselves and are planned for, but the small ones slip out quietly, and it is in their quiet slipping that a budget is most often lost. And so she keeps a quiet eye on them, these daily coins, tracking them in the margins of her ledger, even when they seem too trifling to bother with. She is not miserly about them. The coffee is a comfort worth its cost, the newspaper a bargain, the small pleasures allowed their place. But she watches them all the same, aware of the running total, alert to the moment when the small purchases begin to creep past what the budget can bear. It is a vigilance without anxiety, a simple, steady attention to the places where money is most likely to leak away unnoticed. There is real wisdom in this, and it is the wisdom that separates the family that keeps its head above water from the family that slowly sinks. 2 households might earn exactly the same and spend on exactly the same large things, and yet one thrives while the other struggles. And the difference lies almost entirely in the small purchases, in whether the daily coins are watched or ignored. Your mother's quiet attention to the little things is what makes the whole careful system work, the final layer of discipline that catches what all the larger planning might miss. We have grown careless with exactly these small expenses in our own age, and careless in a way that would have alarmed your mother deeply. The daily coffee bought ready-made, the small conveniences purchased without thought, the endless little charges that flow out of an account we never quite watch. These are the modern version of the quarters and pennies, and they add up just as surely, and far more of us let them slip away unnoticed. The tap of a card hides them, makes each one feel like nothing, until the month's total arrives and startles us. Your mother, tracking her coins in the margins, would have known precisely where every penny went. And so she keeps her quiet watch over the little things, the coffee and the cigarettes and the newspaper and the stamps, folding even these smallest expenses into the great careful arithmetic of the week. None amounts to much alone, but all of them together can make or break the budget, and she knows it, and she watches accordingly. And you carry with you the shrewd, small wisdom of it, the understanding that a household is not undone by its large expenses, which are planned for, but by its small ones, which are not, and that the whole art of getting by lies as much in minding the pennies as in managing the dollars, in the quiet margins of the ledger where a budget is truly won or lost. And so we come to the end of our week together, the last envelope tucked back into the drawer, the ledger closed, the lamp above the kitchen table finally switched off. We have watched a whole life held together with nothing more than a pencil, a stack of worn envelopes, and a great deal of quiet care. We have seen the paycheck carried home in cash, the coins counted into their little labelled homes, the bread stretched thin, and the roast made to feed the family twice. We have stood on the porch in the grey dawn with the cold milk bottles, sat by the lamp while a needle mended a worn elbow, and dropped a penny into a small bank on a bedroom shelf. None of it was grand. That was never the point. It was a family doing the ordinary faithful work of getting by, and doing it with a dignity that had nothing to do with how much money passed through their hands. They mended what they had. They saved toward their dreams $1 at a time. They gave from their little, and they minded the smallest of coins, and they brought each other week after week safely through to Friday. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets, think about the people who woke up in those kitchens and made the coffee, and figured the week by lamplight, and went quietly about the business of holding a life together. They did not think of themselves as living in a special time. They were just living carefully and gratefully one honest week after another. Carry a little of that with you if you can. Slow down. Notice a small thing. Let something be enough. And now let your eyes grow heavy and your breathing soften and rest easy in the quiet. You are safe and warm and cared for. Good night.